Welcome back to Fresh Outlook, everybody. I'm Logan Crawford. Adele and other artists have brought up the issue of using recorded music at political rallies. What rights do the artists have if they feel that their image and reputation are being damaged by politicians that they don't support? And in some cases, they might even despise the politician using his or her song. Let's say hello to the Fresh Outlook guest panel today. I'm joined by Jackie Guzda, Alain Sanders, David Goodman, and joining us live via Skype from California is Bill Hochberg, attorney at law. Bill, I'm going to start with you. The law on this is actually pretty clear. If you buy the rights to use ASCAP music, you can use anybody's song you want, right?
Yeah, it's pretty clear. It does cross over the line when you go from having it used background music to using it as walk-on music. So if it's used repeatedly, like Jumpin' Jack Flash by the Rolling Stones, used as kind of walk-on music at an event by Donald Trump or others, then that steps across the line, and it could be seen as a form of an endorsement or use of trademark. Full disclosure, also, my firm, Greenberg Glusker, has represented Donald Trump in the past. Nothing to do with any of this sort of thing. But having to do with real estate, but we no longer represent him. But in any event, yes, there is a way for an artist or a writer to challenge a use if it goes beyond background music into something that looks more like an endorsement using the music, walk-on music.
And Bill, besides taking legal action, if an artist simply says, hey, I don't want Ronald Reagan using my song, sort of like Bruce Springsteen did when he was using Born in the USA, that's enough to make a politician back off and find another anthem, correct?
Well, it depends. You know, with Donald Trump, for example, I mean, he has made the statement that apparently he thinks he could stand in a street in Manhattan and shoot someone and they'd still vote for him. So it depends on the candidate, and the idea of don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness later seems to be running through it. So I don't know about, from a political standpoint or from a marketing standpoint, why they would continue to use music by an artist that doesn't like them. It could be that the fans don't seem to care, the supporters of the candidate don't seem to care. Sort of back like in the days of the court musicians in the medieval times, who cared who the musician was? They just created the music. I found it ironic that at one of the Trump, when Sarah Palin was, when we were waiting for Sarah Palin to come out, they were playing background music, and one of the things that the campaign chose was the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil, which was...
All right, Bill, we're going to come back to you in just a second. I'm going to join my guest panel in the studio. David, I would think it's tough for a conservative politician to find an artist who is willing to lend his or her name and image to their campaign. That's part of the problem, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer, and I think we've got the lawyer on the show to speak about the legal issues. I think the issue really matters to whether the candidate and the artist align in terms of their political views. I mean, I think you've already said that if the artist is not happy with the politician, I think that artist is going to express that displeasure.
What about the message of the song, Alan? If the message of the song seems to encapsulate what your campaign is all about, well, maybe you're going to say the heck with the artist. Nobody cares about him or her anyway. I'm just taking the music and I'll battle it later, like Bill said.
Sure. Well, I mean, you've got two interests here. I mean, the politician has an interest in sending out his message, and if the music comports with the message, then of course the politician is going to be tempted to do that and even challenge the artist. The artist is concerned about his or her persona. That's what it's all about, commercialization. It's called the right to publicity, but what it is the right of a celebrity, a star, a music star, a sports star, whatever, to control his or her persona. That's property. And to be able to use that property in a way to make more money. So you've got two interests. So I think for the artist, it's very important to stake out a position. I don't support this candidate, and I don't want people to think that I do, because if they think that I do, it might lead to less profitability for my music or my persona. And so you've got a conflict here. Will the politician be deterred? Probably not, if he thinks it will be politically effective for him or her. The law here is a little soft, as our legal expert has said, and so I think it's a matter of what advantage do you think you will get.
Jackie, do you think it's a little bit like plagiarism, that a political candidate is sort of like hacking another artist's message and words and creating a feeling and an aura simply by adopting their song. For example, when Hillary walked out the other night to make her victory speech, and she was claiming victory after having maybe 4 more votes than Bernie Sanders, I think she was doing a Kelly Clarkson song, like "This is what a hero looks like," or whatever it is. And that was actually ringing through my head more than her actual message.
Well, you know, there's more than just words that we use as language. We use the language of music. We use the language of what we wear. All of these nonverbal things. I think if you want to call it plagiarism, I wouldn't go that far. I would say that what that candidate is trying to do is bring in a feeling. Yeah, I'm a hero, or whatever. I'm a man of the people, like Springsteen was. And Ronald Reagan was tapping into that. I think it's using the language of the artists that these candidates are doing. Should they pay for that? Absolutely. You cannot play any kind of music from an artist unless, of course, you buy into the ASCAP, you pay ASCAP umbrella for that if you're going to make money in that facility. For instance, you go into a restaurant, they're playing Adele over the loudspeaker. You have to pay ASCAP a little bit for that because you're making money off of Adele there. Now, is it not the same when a candidate does that? I would be very upset if a candidate that was against my viewpoint was using my music to say that there's something that I don't agree with.
Sure. Because you're ultimately dealing with money, and I agree with you. The candidate wants support, and support can come by the way of votes. It can come by the way of financial contributions. So if you're using somebody's music, somebody's artwork to attract money to you, it's a commercialization of sorts. I mean, and it may hurt. The candidate may get benefit out of that, commercial benefit out of that, and the artist may get commercial harm out of that because he or she may be associated with a cause that they do not support. So what we're dealing about here, or with, is money. And it seems to me that there ought to be some clear rules set down here. I don't know whether the law is the place where the rules should be set down, but certainly an agreement should be made and a very clear understanding should be made between artists and politicians about what kind of music and how that music is to be used for their political causes.
Let's turn to Bill for just a second. Bill, so what does it take for an artist to get a politician to stop using his or her music? Is it a cease and desist letter, or do you actually file suit? Tell me a little bit about some of the...
Typically, there are very few suits that have been filed. There is one, which is the Jackson Brown versus McCain case, which went very strongly toward Jackson Brown's view, and the court found that that McCain lacked consent to use the songwriter's composition in a commercial, and that it left a false impression that he was that Brown was associated with or endorsed the candidate. Now, that was actually in the context of, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, in the context of an anti-SLAPP action, so it was just the judge saying that he felt there was a likelihood of success on the merits. But that case is really the strongest weapon that the artists have and the writers have against someone using songs beyond just background music that they get the right for with ASCAP. This is what I'm talking about, is you need more rights than the ASCAP blanket license, which covers 20 million plus songs. You need a synchronization license if you want to use music on a TV ad or in some way beyond just the background. And that can be expensive. So just to be clear, that they don't have the right to use, they have a very limited right. They can play it as background music. And even there could be a challenge if that music is repeatedly used. They're cheating a little bit, and they're not just using it as background music, but they're using it every time the guy or the gal walks out on stage. That becomes walk-on music. I would argue that that's an endorsement. And to the point about endorsements, if I may, there are some artists, for example, Sam Moore of Sam and Dave, who, although he said that he loved Obama back in 2008, he didn't want him using Hold On, I'm Coming, because he thought that it might alienate some of his users. And with Bob Dole, he also didn't like that they changed it from Soul Man to Dole Man.
I'm going to hold you right there, Bill. Thank you for those thoughts. We'll be back to you in just a minute. We're going to switch to campaign finance reform, but I got to say, Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow, which was used by Bill Clinton, almost became an anthem, not only for his campaign, but for his presidency, and they still play it till this day when he creeps out onto the stage with his mouth open and that blank-looking look.
He's still sexy.
Did you see him standing behind Hillary Clinton when she made her acceptance speech or victory speech? His mouth was open and he was in a daze.
You and I have a different perception.
Okay, well, we're going to have to look more closely in another segment at what is wrong with Bill Clinton. I've heard all kinds of rumors. Let's talk about campaign finance. The two people who are polling the biggest numbers right now, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, finance their campaigns in unconventional ways.
They sure do.
Donald Trump pays out of pocket, and Bernie Sanders raises it only through small contributors, no PACs.
Right.
Is this a good model for the future? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it certainly is. It is a good model. But if I can make a transition from the artists to what we're talking about now, with all due respect to the artists that we've discussed, I think this is going to ultimately be a sidebar issue when you look at the fact that the 2016 cycle is going to represent a $10 billion commitment of funding, of which $6 billion is going to be spent on the media. So, I mean, the artist connection comes into play there, because what we're talking about largely is theater at this point. This is what the campaigns, the primaries, and even the general election potentially have become. So
it's interesting, though, you say that, David, and I agree. Kennedy was the first telegenic president and the first president of the television era. And if you looked at Donald Trump's campaign, you'd say, look how effective TV is. But when it came right down to it, it was retail politics that worked in Iowa.
No,
right?
but Citizens United has changed everything. I mean, the corruption of our political system by that Supreme Court decision and subsequent ones in 2010 and beyond have changed everything. I mean, we are awash in money, and about 200 to 300 families and individuals are essentially controlling the political debate and ultimately the discussion. And what I really want to put out here before we get too deeply into the presidential issue, let's not forget that we are also in this cycle electing 435 members to the U.S. House of Representatives, 1/3 of the U.S. Senate, all of which are going to be awash in these huge amounts of money. So the political system in America is in deep trouble because of money.
Let me talk about money. I'm going to ask you a pointed question here, Alan.
Sure.
Hillary Clinton getting paid $635,000 for one speech from Goldman Sachs. Is that basically legal graft?
No, it's the going rate, and I think you have to understand what the market does. That is the going rate. I mean, it may be outrageous to the
but they're
individual
buying
citizens.
more than a speech.
Well, no,
at that point. They're buying access
something.
and influence.
I agree with the general proposition that money has corrupted the system. I don't debate that, but we kind of have to be a little bit more specific about this. If you're talking about campaigns, what money does for the most part is not convince voters. What it does for the most part is give you high visibility. So Donald Trump has high visibility because he has personal wealth. He's the poster boy for what wealth can do for you. Many people think that he's the anti-establishment candidate. Quite the contrary. He is the establishment candidate. He shows you what money can do. But money gives you visibility. It doesn't necessarily give you success. You can see that on the Republican side. All kinds of PACs are supporting Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and all these other candidates, and they're struggling against themselves and against Trump. So on the campaign trail, it gives you visibility. On politics, that is to say, in terms of governance, what it does is it gives you access.
Okay, the voices in my head are saying we got to stop, no more time. We'll be back after this. Bill Hochberg, thank you for joining us from LA. When we come back, we're going to take a look at Super Sunday. It's about more than football and wings and pizza. It's about those commercials too. We'll take a look at them when we